Let's talk about a powerful psychological trap. I mean, it's something that can affect millions of us, and a lot of the time, we don't even know what's happening. It's called learned helplessness, and by the end of this, you're going to understand exactly what it is, and, more importantly, how to break free.
I want you to think about a time you just felt stuck, you know? Like you were trying and trying, but nothing you did seemed to make a difference. That feeling of being completely trapped? Yeah, it's a real thing, and it has a name.
And it is absolutely one of the worst feelings, right? It's not just having a bad day. It's this deep sense of powerlessness that can just drain the life out of you. But here's the wild part. This feeling was actually discovered through a pretty surprising experiment.
To really get this, we've got to go back to the 1960s, to a psychologist named Martin Seligman. He was really trying to figure out this whole idea of control and what happens when we feel like we've lost it.
So his setup was actually pretty simple. He had two groups of dogs, but what these two groups were about to go through, well, it was completely different, and it led to a discovery that changed psychology. In the first part of the experiment, one of the groups was put in the situation where they'd get these mild but unavoidable electric shocks, and no matter what they did, they could press a lever, they could bark, they could run around, nothing worked. They couldn't stop it. They quickly learned, my actions don't matter.
Okay, so then comes phase 2, and this is where it gets really interesting. Both groups, the one that had no control and the one that did, were put in a new box. This time, there was an easy way out. All they had to do was hop over a little wall to get to a safe area. The escape route was right there.
And this was the jaw-dropper. The dogs that always had control, they figured it out instantly and jumped to safety. But the group that had learned they were powerless, they just laid down. They took the shocks. They didn't even try to escape, even though freedom was literally one tiny hop away. They had learned to be helpless.
So you see, this shocking result had nothing to do with their physical ability. It was all about their mindset. Seligman's experiment finally put a name to that feeling of being completely and utterly stuck that we talked about a minute ago.
He called it learned helplessness. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a state we get into when our past experiences teach us, hey, you've got no control here. The real danger is that we start carrying that belief into totally new situations, and we become blind to the escape routes that might be right in front of our faces.
And this, right here, is the whole ballgame. The problem is almost never a lack of skill or ability. The real trap is in our minds. It's the belief that we're powerless that paralyzes us, not the reality of the situation itself.
Now, I know this might all sound a little bit dark, but stick with me, because here's the most important part of the entire story. Think about it. If helplessness is something that can be learned, then that means it can also be unlearned. And this is where we pivot from feeling hopeless to finding hope.
This slide just lays it out so clearly. Seligman called the solution learned optimism. Look at the difference. On the left, learned helplessness says, bad things are permanent, and I can't do anything about them. But on the right, learned optimism completely reframes it. It says, setbacks are temporary, and I can do something about them.
So where does this change happen? It happens in the stories we tell ourselves when things go wrong. It's called your explanatory style. When you fail, do you tell yourself, well, I'm just a failure and this is forever? Or do you say, okay, that didn't work. Let me try a different approach. That one little switch changes everything.
Okay, so this all sounds great, but how do we actually do it, right? How do we go from knowing this to living it? Let's get into the practical how-to steps to actually change that internal story of yours.
It really comes down to these three things. First, just get good at noticing the feeling. Acknowledge it when that sense of I can't do anything starts to creep in. Second, challenge it. Actively ask yourself, wait a minute, is it really true that I have zero control here? And finally, number 3, you reframe it. You find a new story, a new explanation, one that sees the problem as a temporary thing you can work on, not a permanent part of who you are.
And that's the big takeaway here. You know, just like those dogs had the physical ability to jump over that wall, you have the mental ability to jump over a negative belief. The power to break this cycle is right there, in your ability to become the author of your own story. So I'll just leave you with this one thought. Every single time you face a setback, you have a choice in how you explain it to yourself. And that simple explanation can either keep you trapped or can set you free. So what's your next choice going to be?